There's a story you believe, and this story shapes the way you think about yourself, the people around you, and the world at large. You could have gotten this story from anywhere. It could have come from the way you were raised, the people that brought you up, the environment you grew in, the experiences you've had, things you've been exposed to, places you've worked, people you've interacted with, anywhere. The issue really is not whether this is a good or bad story, because good and bad really are relative. The issue is this story helpful or is it harmful? Does it propel you or does it limit you? And this is the story that tells you things like what beauty looks like, what success looks like, what leadership feels like, what relationships should feel like and how they should be structured, how you should show up at your workplace, the farthest you can go, promotions you can apply for, even jobs that you can apply for or not. This story, very pervasive, but also very quiet. Sometimes you don't even know that you believe it. This story is what is known as a narrative. This is Narratives and Power, where we explore how the stories we believe and tell ourselves about ourselves affect how we show up to the people around us and the world in general. My name is Julie. Now, if you're thinking where you've heard about this name before, you probably know me from Lattes with Julie. That's my other podcast. And I'll tell you a little bit about that and what becomes of Lattes with Julie in a little moment. So, what are we going to be talking about here on Narratives and Power? We're going to be talking about how that story has been affecting you and how you show up in different aspects of your life. Take me for instance. I'm a mother of 2 boys. Now, I grew up around very strong women. My mother, God rest her soul in peace, was a very strong woman. My aunties, and mostly from my mother's side, I saw that from a very early age. I was surrounded by strong women. So basically, the unspoken rule was you had to be strong. And that is exactly what I became, strong. Until you start realizing, does this strength in that way work for you or does it work against you? Because here's the thing with strong people. We're the ones that provide a shoulder to lean on for other people, right? But who provides a shoulder for us when we need a shoulder to lean on? We're the ones that ask and are always checking in on everyone else. Are you okay? Did you eat? Yes, we even ask people, did you eat? We ask younger siblings, did you put on a sweater? But who asks you, did you eat? Are you okay? How are you holding on through this? So you see, strength is not necessarily bad, but strength can become a limiting factor when you believe that in every relationship that you show up to, you must be the strong one. So what does that do? You stop expressing yourself because you're the strong one. The other person is the weaker one. So you're loading over them, and who's going to be strong for them? And you've already assumed that strong role for yourself. Or it could be something like motherhood. How I show up, how I've showed up in my motherhood for a very long time. You know, we grew up hearing things like mothers are superhuman, mothers are angels. I remember one quote I read when I was a little girl that said, God couldn't be everywhere, so he created mothers. Imagine that God couldn't be everywhere, so he created mothers. What does that do to a little girl? It tells you need to show up like God. You need to be everywhere. You need to be everything for everyone. And you need to take on whatever is thrown at you. Now, what happens when you wake up and you're actually feeling overwhelmed, overstimulated, you're feeling totally depleted? Here's how that narrative creeps up on you. Instead of you questioning the narrative and asking, who told me that I'm supposed to show up like God? Who told me that God couldn't be everywhere? So he created mothers. And did the person who said that, did they have a 2-year-old like I do, and a 4-year-old, and a 2-month-old baby? Were they in that kind of state of mind when they were saying that God couldn't be everywhere, so he created motherhood? Instead of you questioning the narrative, we start questioning ourselves. You start believing you're a failure. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't be feeling depleted, you wouldn't be feeling overwhelmed, you wouldn't be feeling overstimulated. Now, let's just pack that motherhood narrative aside. The other narrative could be your professional narrative, the story you tell yourself about how far you can go in life, which also shows up about how far you believe you can go professionally. Ever noticed that there are people at your workplace who will apply for any position, whether they check off all the boxes or not? But then there's you. If there's just one box that you don't check off, you decide that this job is not for me. This job is not for someone like me. She's more outgoing or he's more outspoken. Let them try. And you think that you're being pragmatic. Unbeknownst to you, pragmatism has nothing to do with it. What is actually happening is that narrative is whispering back to you. There's only so far you can go. This is how far people like us go. Let the others try their luck. Like I said, these narratives show up everywhere. In politics and leadership, interesting. Look at the times we're living in this country. We complain, by the way, a lot about leadership. But when people ask us, why don't you put yourself out there for this position? No, politics is not in me. I don't even vote. Yeah. Is it that politics is not in you? Or do you believe leadership takes a certain kind of person, a certain kind of breed that you believe you're not? So you see, when you talk about narratives, it's not just about parenthood. It's not just about who we are. It's about how we show up in life and in our places of work. How about, I know I've talked about a lot about women and mothers. How about men? I saw this a lot with my brother when we were growing up. He's several years older than me, but I saw it. When you're growing up and when our parents were bringing us toys, later, now these are things you don't realize. Like as a 4-year-old, you're not questioning your mom. Why are you bringing me a doll and him a car? No. But later when you look back, you start asking, oh, by the way, it really did happen like this. And I would notice we would get the dolls, my sisters and I, and our brother would always get the fancy cars, the balls and all that. And so what happens? From a very early age, you're telling the man that this is the role that they're supposed to show up as later in life. Or how many times have you heard, boys don't cry, and if you do, you're embarrassing us. So you grow up and you become maybe one of two things: someone who never cries or someone who resents vulnerability and emotion in other people. It doesn't matter, male or female. It doesn't matter. There's a story you believe about yourself. And that story is shaping the way you're showing up in your relationships, at work, in your family, wherever you go. It is that story that you begin to live out. So on narratives and power, we will not diagnose. By the way, I don't have all the answers. I don't even think I have any of them, because I'm also trying to figure out this thing called life, just like you are. But we will have deep conversations and we will challenge the uncomfortable questions. Questions like, where did this story come from? That story that you believe about yourself, where did it come from? Who told you that story? And whose voice is missing or was missing in that story? We will listen to people who have confronted narratives. I have heard about people who grew up in abject poverty, like, the way people talk about generational wealth. They grew up talking about generational poverty. But somewhere along the way, they were able to shake off that narrative, to go farther than anyone expected, to go higher than anyone expected. And these things are not magic. Some of these things you can't just pray away, and name and claim and possess and all those things. No. Real hard work must be put in this. So those are the kinds of people we'll be talking to on narratives and power. And they will be telling us, number one, how did you confront the narrative? How did it present itself? And you got to a point where you finally realized this is not coincidence. It's not a coincidence that this is how far people in my family or in my background go. How then did you determine that you're going to chart a different path? And where has that path led you? And it is stories like that. Like I said, we're not diagnosing, we're not curing, we're not treating, we are confronting, and we are pushing back on the narratives that have held us back for as long as they have. So once again, I look forward to seeing you here on Narratives and Power, where we will explore how the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are affecting and shaping the way we are showing up in the world, to the people around us, and the world in general. I'm Julie.